Review copy provided by PlayStation.
Everyone keeps secrets. Sometimes it's the only way to protect the ones we love.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special interview. We are Easy Allies. I'm Michael Huber. That is Bradley Ellis.
Yo.
And we are here with...
Eric Williams.
And Eric Williams, what do you do?
Make video games.
Just some video games.
Yes! The director of God of War, Ragnarok.
Hold on, before we get into it, though.
Yeah?
Congratulations.
Yes.
11 million copies sold?
Yes.
Yeah.
We saw this right now?
Shout
Pretty insane.
out. Quite a success.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your history with God of War, the franchise,
Oh man,
before we get into it?
it's a long story. That'll be the,
Yeah.
the whole story. I've been there since 2004. I think April 2004 exactly is when I joined the team, and just started building creatures, and then moved my way up to Kratos and bosses on God of War 1. Then 2 kind of led that design team, the combat there on that, and then we kind of did the planning stages of 3 and kind of went our separate ways. But I was still working with the studio as a consultant, so then I worked on every game. I touched a little bit,
Awesome.
Yeah.
and then came back to the studio full time to do Ragnarok.
Yeah. What was one of the first creatures do you remember you worked on?
Oh yeah,
God of War
yeah,
1? Like,
100%.
Yeah.
Is the little Cerberus puppy. That was
Oh,
the first thing they gave me.
they like,
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
my
yeah,
god, those
Yeah.
things give me nightmares.
Can blame me for all that.
So awesome. How is that different than like directing and kind of being the captain of the ship, so to speak?
For me, I don't. This is gonna be a terrible answer, but
No bad answer.
to me, it's like it's not much different, other than you're just responsible for a lot more things, and you also are kind of the tastemaker, if you will, like how we're gonna go about things. So a lot more care and thought has to be put into it. Like when you're building a creature, you're just like, let me try this, let me try that, let me try this, because it's on your time to fail and iterate and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you're doing that as a director, then everyone's paying the penalty. So you have to be a little bit more buttoned up about like, okay, I can only make so many mistakes. You guys can do whatever you need to like iterate and get there. But the more I make, the more everyone feels it. So you're a little bit more cautious about those type of things. And I made a bunch of them still, and the team still rallied and figured out a way to come through on all of them. But that's why you want to work with really good people, because they'll get you to the finish line every time.
That's awesome. You were talking about making creatures and combat. What is your like passion for this franchise? Like, what do you love working on the most?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the creatures. I mean, Kratos was the big one, because like where the first studio I worked at, we made like fighting games, like we made these backyard wrestling games, X-Men fighting games, and all this kind of stuff. So it was like building these characters that go against each other, and then they had like pluses and minuses. You always start with the character in the middle. Like when we made this X-Men game, like Cyclops was dead zero, like and then everybody was on some kind of slider thereafter. So looking at it when you're making single player games, like we don't have to worry about all that anymore, because no one's going to complain that like Kratos is like mauling the monsters. Poor Minotaur doesn't have enough tools in his kit to take on Kratos. So it's a little bit easier to like have fun with that, but then you got to make sure he's not broken to the point where there's no challenge or kind of like tension. So that has always been fun, but it's like there's nothing more magical than like you get in the scripts, you work with the animators, you get it, you plug it in, and you push that button, and the move comes out, and you're like, okay. And it doesn't hit. It just, you see an animation play, and, and then you go in, and you look at it frame by frame. You say, all right, startup frame's going to be here. End frame's going to be here. How are we going to do all this kind of stuff? And then you start hitting it, and you watch the monster react, and then it's just piling things on, right? It's like, okay, he reacts now, but it doesn't feel good. There's no camera shake. There's no hit pause. There's no rumble. Okay, let's do all that stuff. Okay, it's starting to feel a little bit better. It's like, all right, now let's get the blood in there. Let's get, all the little icing. And when it all comes together and you hit a guy and you're like, that feels pretty good. And you'd have these magic moments. I remember we just leave sometimes in the play tests early on in like God of War 1, we'd leave people in a room with like respawning skellies, as we called them, but they were I think it's called the Legionnaires in the game or whatever. And they would just keep killing them. Like, we'd have to stop them. You know what I mean? They were like, they were just having fun, just mauling these guys over and over and over again. Yeah. And it was like, okay, I think we're on to something.
Yeah.
Like, now we just need to make a lot more of that. But it's fun when you see those moments where you almost have to stop them from having fun, which is a weird thing as a designer, because that's your whole goal. But, I love building creatures and monsters and characters. It's just, especially like Kratos, again, to go back to that, is, there's only so many like classic characters that get made in modern media. A lot of them, they were established in the olden times, right?
Right.
Like Spider-Man is super old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People think he's like, oh, he's so modern. It's like, dude, the thing was made like forever and a day ago. Yeah. And then like, if you look at like Wolverine's probably one of the most recognizable characters. Wolverine didn't even come on the scene till like, it was like 85 or something like that.
Okay.
But he's kind of like one of the, like, who after that can you name as like a really good Marvel or DC character that that's that big, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so it's hard to do it. And when we were looking at Kratos, we're like, could he actually be that kind of thing? Mm-hmm. And then when you look back and, you see like the groundwork that Dave Jaffe, that is, Charlie Wen, Corey, myself, Derek Daniels, Richard Fogey, and a couple other people that kind of touched him early on, like laid that down, and then everybody just kind of carried the torch when we got to the new group. Like Bruno took over for Corey as the animator, and they're kind of like all these people came together to build this character that's now really memorable. And it's like you don't get that shot very often in your career
that's
to
true.
do that. So it's kind of awesome.
Reboot him almost as a new character.
So it's been pretty cool. And then to take him from that Kratos in the Greek era to the Norse era has been even more magical.
Yeah, definitely. So many people have fallen in love with this kind of Kratos that never cared about God of War before. Like, I met several people who didn't even play the old ones. They love Kratos now.
Yeah.
They're like, he's the best.
It's kind of wild to me because, like, we never saw him any different. It's just that you're in a different place in your life. You know what I mean? It's like,
definitely.
It's like you see some of your friends and you're like, they shouldn't be a dad, right?
Yeah.
And then like 10 years later, you're like, dude, he's a really good dad. You know what I mean? But like when you see him in their 20s, you're like, this is not going to be a good look, right? Yeah. So yeah, and it's just that you grow up just like people do, and you make mistakes, you learn about the world, you grow, you travel, you see stuff.
Kratos is like pretty much the face of the franchise, obviously, but one of the faces of
PlayStation.
Sony and PlayStation in
definitely.
general. How do you balance that pressure and expectation with like wanting to tell an honest narrative? Like, does that ever get away? Like, there's so much pressure behind Kratos being this mascot, but you also want to like tell the story.
I mean, we kind of had like 3 key words for Ragnarok that we drove it, and it was like this idea that was epic, unflinching, and honest. And as long as we stuck to those guns and made sure we ticked those boxes appropriately, then it was going to be what we like and what we think is good, and then people usually agree to some degree. Not everybody. I understand there's people out there that don't like it, but we get enough people that are like, okay, yeah, this is something that we want to spend time with, and we see it. We get the feedback from people, and they're like, I haven't played a game like this in a long time where it just sucks me in. And the way we really wanted to approach it was that the more you gave it, the more it would give you back. And it's kind of like that. If you go wander around and you do this or you try that, it usually gives you something in return. And we're all gamers at heart, so we love games that do that. And it's our own brand of it. It's not, esoteric. It's more like, okay, here it is. But it's not ham-fisted where it's rammed down your throat, where it's like, oh, I have to listen to this exposition for a long time. Like, that was a very important thing in our cutscenes. We didn't like to have exposition. That was for like character development, storytelling, these kind of pieces, because you don't want to just hear them babble on. You want to be engaged in it. And yeah, so it's a lot of those little pieces that you have like foundationally, and then it's just like, does everybody in the team align with these ideas? That's why we also keep them very short so people can remember them, because you give them some like log line mission statements. Like, I don't know what that is. Yeah, right. So, but
did any of those, like you're talking about, just getting the team all on the same page? Can you think of anything that you can share that maybe the team didn't rely on and maybe you dropped it, or
no? Anything that we really cut. It's just. So early on, we create this thing called the inspiration book. Yeah. It's like, and we give it to the entire team, and we give them like the afternoon then to go ahead and like digest that and see what we're gonna make. And we did that like, I want to say October-ish of 2018. We had that ready to go, and then we use that as kind of start breaking this down, and then everybody gets scared because they see it and they're just like, how are we gonna make this? This is impossible. What maniac put this together? But once they get over that hump and they start digging in, they're like, okay, we could do this, we could do that. If you make these concessions. And so it's a lot of like horse trading back and forth to get to these kind of points. And it doesn't always work out, by the way. There's some people that are still like, hey man, we shouldn't have done this. And they may be right. We'll never know, because the thing that we put in the box, so to speak, is what it is. But you just kind of have that vision and you run towards it as best you can. And then you're trying to keep, when you see people straying, and just like pull them back. As far as like things, to answer your specific question, this one was not as much because we had the groundwork laid. So it was more about like how much could we do. So like with the companions, that was like one of those where they were like, there's a lot like on this list.
Right.
Like how are we it took us the whole game to do one.
Yeah.
Last time, you know what I mean? Now you want to do 9? Like what's wrong with you?
Is that kind of like, I assume when most people beat the first game, we all assumed it'd be a trilogy, this whole saga. When did you guys decide to be like, we're going to make this 2 parts, actually? We think it's a good size.
So you're leading me to the best answer, which is like that was probably the most controversial thing. And that was pretty much discussions held between me and Corey.
Okay.
And very few other people because it's a contentious thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, if you're going to do this, and he had already given me like the 3 things that needed to happen. And I think we could get it done in 2. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I need to go think about this. So I was like, this was like a Thursday. I was like, give me till Monday so I can have some time. And he was like, okay. And then we met back up on Monday and I had worked through a couple things. And I was like, well, if we can get these pieces in order, then I think we can make a run at it in 2. And then he was like, I'm going to go think about it. Because then I think he got cold feet. Like, again, like, whereas, like, because this happened on 2018 when he told me, like, tear it down. I was like, all right, jump's gone, all this, you know. And he was just, like, freaking out. He was like, it's not. I was like, that's what you said to do. So I think he went and did the same thing. Then he goes, all right. And he came back and he was like, all right, I think if you did this and this, that would solve this problem that you had. And then those other solutions that you had before that I didn't like actually line up now. Or he had time to think about it. And that's what it takes. It just, you almost don't want to have it out all the time. You want to, like, go away and, like, kind of decompress and let your subconscious like working through the problem and then come back. And then once we pushed that out to the team though, that we had already made the decision, they were like, you guys are crazy. You want us to make 2 games in the time that we made 1. And, you know, and they're not wrong. But it's, you have to get past that fear. But even like stuff like the no cut camera, that was even like people were like, we're not going to do that dumb thing again, right? And it was like, well, we invested all this time into making it work, and I have ideas on how we can expand it. So yes, and they're very unhappy. And then again, but once everybody gets over that, there's like, all right, well, this is what we're going to do. Everybody gets on the boat and we all row together.
We'll make it work,
So, but it's hard. I mean, like, you think about anything in life, trying to organize people, like 5 people to go to dinner and you pick the same place, like, let alone 400 people that are like, let's make this crazy vision with all these moving parts.
That is awesome.
I'm a little curious, you brought up, talking about, Corey said something about jumping with Kratos. Now, Kratos was jumping a lot in the original games.
Yeah.
He's pretty stationary. He doesn't really jump that much in just God of War, but in this one, he's a little more mobile, which I greatly appreciated.
Yes. So,
is there more you would want to do with that?
I mean, we weren't bringing the jump back for the Norse ones. Like, that was kind of like a staple to keep him more grounded. And, you know, I know that's controversial and people are going to have opinions about it, but it's like there's dev reasons and then there's thematic reasons and there's gameplay reasons. And, you know, I don't really want to get into like the GDC talk of where that decision was made, but, you know, there were reasons that made sense all the way through. And, you know, if you want, I can talk about them, but I don't think you want to spend your time with that.
I just really like.
I would just put my foot in the mouth. I brought it up. I shouldn't have done that.
I know
It's interesting.
The attacks from the top, like jumping.
Yeah, so I mean,
awesome.
The whole idea was that like when 2018 Kratos, when we meet him at the house, he's like retired. Like, you know, and then Baldur shows up, and it's like a rude awakening. Like, I haven't done this in a long time, so it's like a boxer who has ring rust, and then somebody calls him out in the street, and it's like, I know how to do this, but I haven't, you know, I've been eating a lot and I haven't been in the gym and, you know, like these things. And so we wanted Kratos to have that where it's like, whoa, okay, this is like a rude awakening. But now, once that was finished, 2018, and then they have that 3 years of the Fimbulwinter, he knows like what time it is. So it's like that's why the backyard, you see it, there's targets and training dummies and everything. And he's got the kid out there working out and trying to get him like ready for this. And Kratos himself is getting back to it. So we were like, well, we can echo that through the gameplay. He's more mobile now. He's a little bit more sturdy. Has a little bit more tricks in the bag again, you know, and they're, you know, kind of even giving them the multiple rages wasn't just for like gameplay expression types, but it was also to show that he kind of mastered that a little bit, right? It wasn't just him exploding anymore. He could use it for different reasons. He could wield the weapons. I like the Wrath one with the weapons. I pushed hard on that one. Because, you know, you want to see him go crazy with the weapons too. But
Absolutely.
And then that echoed into Atreus' rage then, because his was completely out of control.
Right.
He couldn't control it, right? And that's where we set up with the bear, and then, you know, and that was supposed to echo like, okay, that's him being dad, out of control. No, literally just blackout maul things. And then the wolf was like more, like almost not from his mother's side, but it was more tempered, you know what I mean, already. And then so he learned that from the giants, and then he pulls that, and those two together kind of like fold in. But he is the wolf at the end of the day, and that was like the kind of, you know, the thematic you see it with the bear and the wolf logos and things like that. That they're from different things, but they walk the same path.
So freaking cool. So cool.
And there was a wild thing on Reddit that we saw, and I was passing around to the team, but a bear and a wolf did find each other out in nature, and it was like in the middle of nowhere. And people were documenting them walking, and I was like, dude, look, it's like it's happening in the real world. It's so cool. So yeah, those are awesome little moments.
Wow. So,
and just to touch on that one last thing is like that bear and wolf thing that was like the whole theme behind the Hosier track. Like when I met with him and talked to him, and I was like this story about this bear and the wolf, and then he started to pick up on it when they started to send the bits back where he was kind of like doing the demos. It was like, oh, this is really cool. And I was kind of super stressed at that point. I wasn't sure if we should do this because, you know, it's like it's hard to land that. Sometimes you watch a movie and then the song at the end, you're like, what is this? But I was like, man. And then this guy in our music group, Alex Hackford, he kept pushing. He's like, hey, he's gonna land it. We're gonna get him and Bear together. It's gonna be great. Don't sweat it. He's like, I know you're super stressed right now. And then sure enough, man, they
killed it.
Crushed it. So hats off to Alex and Bear and Hosier because they all brought that thing together.
Our patrons, we do Game of the Year, obviously. Our patrons vote on certain things, and the best song, their favorite song of the entire year.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
that
definitely landed.
Yeah, definitely landed.
I think the first time when I heard it after the black credits, you know, where the funeral happens, and I was just like, man, this is like so fitting, you know. And the first time it went in, it happened really quickly, and there wasn't like a little dead spot. And then Sony, one of our people in the audio music group, she went in, and I was like, hey, can you just? And she was like, got you. And she just like nailed it just perfectly, where it was just like we were like, oh, it's over. And then you start to hear that drone, and it's just like it all, and you're like, it all comes right slamming right back into you. And I was like, all right, we got a little magic here. So it's cool.
Since we're talking about music, one thing that me and Mike specifically,
that's what I was gonna go. That's what I was
wanting to. We're hoping to hear was because we felt like we got teases of it throughout the games. Is that classic God of War
classic theme, like the Brothers' Blood, I think it's called in 3, right? Yeah, and like you'll hear that kind of come through when Kratos is kind of like getting back to his old ways. But then,
I mean, that's the beauty of Bear, man. Like he knows how to like put you right on the edge, but not fully give it to you, because it's like we didn't want it like the Greek games are the Greek games, the Norse games are this, but he's still him, you know, and he's got a little mix of that, so we let it come through at times, and he just, you know, Bear's so good at that stuff.
Yeah.
So, if you haven't seen the thing where he talks about the inverting the two main themes. You know, like the three.
Seen that. No.
There's like the 3 notes for Kratos. You know, the boom, boom, boom. He just flips them for Atreus' theme, and you go back
that's
and you're
cool.
like, dude, like how does he come up with this stuff? You know what I mean? It's like because I'll be listening to him. I'm like, this is really cool, but there's something, and then he'll tell me, and he whispers in your ear, and you're like, so good at what you do. You know, but again, it comes back to that. Like you're gonna work at this high level, you have to be surrounded by everybody that's into it for that reason, and it. And when it gels, man, you do the magic.
Was he always going to be a character in the game, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so like the first time I met with him, because I had never met him on 2018, and you know, I didn't even know if he was going to come back, and so I was like, man, I gotta butter the bread, you know. Make sure. He's like, who's this new guy? Like, where's Corey at? I'll talk to him only. But so I had Raph, our art director, like make the concept of him, and I had a big stack of the characters as we were going through the first meeting. I was walking through the game, and then I had that one just snuck in there, and we were going through, and I didn't have the name on it yet, you know. And he was like, "Wait a second, who's that guy?" And I was like, "We'll get back to him." And I said this, and then he the whole time I like put him under a desk, and he was just like, "But I want to see the thing." You know? And then at the end, I told him, I was like, "Hey, if you want to do it, like we want to put you in the game." And he was like, he thought I was messing with him the whole time, and I was like, "No, like for real." And he goes, "Oh, like." I'll just be like an NPC. I'm like, no, you'll have a whole part. Like you'll play the hurdy-gurdy and all. And then he was like, I could go on the stage. And, you know,
he's so
exactly. And when he came, he was like a little kid.
Awesome, dude.
Because the way it's almost like kind of way your studio is, but imagine the monitors up high. Yeah. And when they're in the suit, they can see themselves for the first time. And then it's just, everybody does the same thing. They like do weird little dances. They like shoot middle fingers. Like, you know, like they turn into little kids because you're like, that is weird that there's a toy that I'm animating right now in live, you know. And then he played a hurdy-gurdy and stuff, and he was like super into it. So yeah, but it was a little magic moment.
Yeah.
We just like to give back to people that, you know, like take care of us. Like Bear's the best.
Love that.
Makes a great dwarf. Definitely.
Absolutely. Speaking of dwarves, speaking of characters, was it ever a challenge to, because you said there are so many characters, was it ever a challenge to keep them all relevant in the story, just juggling all those balls? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's hats off to the writing team. I had made these little dumb Excel matrices, like, it was like had the timeline of the game and then every character, and then I was like, I made them fill in like what they're doing.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
so we could see their, like, almost like a comic strip, like how many beats they're going to have each character. And I think it was poor Anthony Birch I made do that. It's the most brain numbing exercise ever to do that. I'd done it for other things, but it does help though, because then you can look at it and you go, oh, well, they don't have enough, or it's been too long and we might forget who that character is. And some of them you just have to be like, well, that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And so they had their own little like 3-act play, if you will. And then some had more meat, and then some had like a little bit more bare bones. But yeah, it's tough when you're trying to juggle that many characters, and but we knew we needed to go complete opposite of 2018, because otherwise they're just like, well, I played that game. And that's like a dangerous place to be.
Definitely.
So it's like, that was very focused, like character driven, like study of two characters with some peripherals. And this was like, we'll just do the ensemble, and then that way when you see them together, they make sense. But on paper, you look at it and you're like, this is so disparate. But for that very reason, was that because it's kind of like the old saying, like, be where your enemies are. And our enemy was our own game. Because if you just do that again, people are like, why? They just made the same game again.
Yeah.
And we already knew.
Absolutely.
And then the whole DLC thing was already starting to bubble up, and I was like, really? Like, this is where we're at with video games? Like, sequels or DLC? Okay, whatever. So people are getting in their head about everything.
Yeah.
So, there's enough doubt making video games, let alone stuff like that. So whoever started that rumor, please don't do that anymore.
Yeah, please don't do it.
Please don't. We're all here just loving video games.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on now.
I want every game to be good, or more games to be good, to the place where people are really enjoying them, because it just means more people are playing. That's what we want as an industry. Like, so we're kind of like, as a community or whatever, people have knives out and trying to kill things down. I'm like, I don't understand that, because it actually contracts, and then you're going to have less experimentation, and it just gets us to the place that's not healthy for video games. Anyhow.
I love that.
I don't think people remember when it was like my age, when it was like you played video games and you were like a pariah. You know what I mean? It was
Absolutely.
like you didn't tell.
Even
You
a
like,
little bit.
yeah, you like find your friend and be like, hey, but there was like, you didn't just go around and be like, I played video games all day yesterday. Like, that was not a cool thing. You were.
You'd be like, oh, you got Super Nintendo? You
play? Yeah, exactly.
You play? Dude, sick.
Yeah.
Or you'd see that like weird, conglomeration of humans at the arcade.
Yeah.
They were from like all the different
Arcade?
social subcultures, but then they
absolutely.
came together to play Street Fighter.
Oh, yeah.
But at school,
All
you didn't
fighting
speak to
games
each
there.
other. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Did you play Arcade Paradise by chance?
No.
Sick game. Really
Okay.
cool.
I'll check that out.
Yeah.
The things I'm playing right now is I played this game Blasphemous, because I love.
We love Blasphemous.
Man, that game was
That game's
awesome.
so- yes.
Yeah.
I love that game.
See, I'm under a rock. I don't play anything while I'm.
Yeah,
working
when
on
you're working,
something.
of course.
Yeah. And so then I just finished Tunic last
Nice.
night, which was fantastic.
Nice.
I hadn't felt like that in a long time. Like being like the first time I played Zelda 1, and even the little nods at the beginning when you
With the
where
manual
you
and
did where
everything.
you go into the cave. Like,
Oh,
with
yeah,
the same
yeah.
start. Like, I love that stuff. So, and then I played Guardians of the Galaxy, I played Dying Light 2.
Oh,
So you've
been playing a lot, actually.
Yeah, I've been playing like River City Girls 1, River City Girls 2.
Oh, yeah,
dude,
we just played two a
have
little bit.
such similar tastes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was playing Record of Lotus War last night. After
I beat
finished
that
it.
one. Yeah.
What else was I playing? I tried the Ghostbusters game, but I'm not super into FPSs, so it was hard for me.
Sure,
Like,
Yeah, we get that for sure.
I really wanted to like it though.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, the
Story
Ghostbusters is awesome.
presentation is so good.
Yeah. What else have I been playing? Played a crap ton of Castlevania games. I played like 9 of them over Christmas
Yes.
break.
Yes.
Just to play them again was
Yes.
fantastic.
What
Because they're
is-
all on PlayStation now, so it's
Yeah,
so
that's
cool.
some of my favorites.
Yeah.
What is like? Does the team like? Are they because these games take years to make? So is the team like looking? Because you guys are like industry leaders. People look up to you. But are you guys looking at other games taking inspiration or?
I mean, you always do
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
everything you do as a developer. I mean, anything creative. Period. I mean, even what you guys do. It's like there's a crap ton of experience you have up to this that you don't really realize is connecting the dots for this decision you make in this moment in time. Do you know what I mean? So it's like me being like, okay, Kratos is gonna have a spear in this game. It wasn't just some wild idea. It was just like there was a bunch of stuff that had been bubbling in my head. And we did it in Ghost of Sparta, and I loved it, and I wanted to get back to that kind of version of him. And everything at the stars just aligned. It was like, all right, now we're going to do this. But it's like, that's how it works. It's just a bunch of associations. Like, I think the best game developers are really good at association. They can just find you throw a bunch of random things on the table and they'll figure out a way to make a pattern or something that makes sense out of them or arrange them in a way that's like interesting. And I guess some people could call that taste, but I think it's more this pattern recognition and association. Yeah. It's my weird, wild thing.
No, it's cool insight. I I've never heard stuff like this.
God, I love it. Were you were talking about the spear? Because I mean, I the same thing. I was like, dude, let's get that freaking Chains of Olympus, Spartan freaking spear vibes. Were you ever gonna put more weapons in, or was it always just like one extra?
So that's always a challenging thing. There's only so much time to do what you think is going to work best for what the game is going to be. And then there's the dream stuff, right? So like, you start with, it's like, let's give them 5 things. And then you go and look at how long it takes to execute them. And you're like, well, we could do that, but they won't be at the same quality. So basically what you're going to have is you'll have the blades and the axe be top tier, and then there's like a tertiary weapon. Yeah. And we're like, we don't really like that. Like, let's just go all in on this. And, it was not an easy decision. The part that was easy was not to give Mjolnir, which I'm going to get myself in trouble more, but I'm just going to double down on it. Do it. Was because it means we would have had to do something different with Thor's story or take him out of the picture, do all these things. It just had ripple effects across, like what is quote unquote, like I want the fun thing. It's kind of like where people are, crabbing about like, I just watched Last of Us and there was no Joel hanging upside down. It's like, well, that doesn't mean it's wrong. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just a choice that was made, kind of thing. So I'll double down on that. Like, the spear was always in my mind the thing because of the heritage behind it and the story we're trying to tell across Kratos and Brock and all those things and get him back to who he was. And also because we already knew the ending, it was like, even we show him on the mural with the axe because that's of that land. It could have also been, at times we had a version of it where he had the spear and he looked like the Tyr statue in the lake. Right. But we didn't want people to think he was Tyr. So we had to there's baked in things there we had to pull out. There was even a moment where when they showed up at Ragnarok and he came out of that portal, he just threw a spear at the wall, right out of the gate, like the way Spartans start fights usually. Yeah. But it took... That put you in too much of a yeehaw moment instead of the little downbeat that we wanted to have where you see some of the troops getting splattered and then, Freyr has this moment to get Ingrid back. So it's all about in service of who's going to get their moment when, like you were saying, then you have that little thing like, okay, who's going to get what they need right now? Because we know Kratos is going to get a whole bunch on there. So giving him that there felt like it was like taking away from other characters. Yeah. So it's a lot of wrestling with the narrative.
Yeah, I guess like Mjolnir's a great example of maybe something in the future for someone else. Like, I guess everyone before we played that game, we were expecting to have that hammer. It was so
expected. Yeah, it was so
But then when you finish it, I was like, oh, it makes sense.
Yeah, and
I love when she flies away.
The through part was
great moment.
That was super important to me because the whole thing was like that you can change and be better. And by right when Thor figures that out, he doesn't get the chance, but she sees him. Yeah, she sees him be better. So she has it now in her is like, she saw drunk dad and she was mad at him and didn't know how to get through to him, and then she saw that glimmer and she's like. Like that's usually if you see parents, that are alcoholics or whatever, and the children usually go one of two ways. They follow directly in those footsteps because they can't escape it, right? It's like a black hole. Or you watch them in there, it's a complete 180. They're nothing like that. And they do everything the other way because they're like, I can't be that. I couldn't be around that. I can't. And then that's what she has a launching pad. And then when you see her and she says she's gonna make him proud.
Yeah. So epic.
Yeah, and it's just a little moment for her, right? And it puts a little cap on that. Anyway.
How many of those moments are planned out? Like, does any of that stuff just kind of happen, or is that all like the moments like that?
Those are all those epilogues are planned because if they're not
from the jump,
because if they're not, they just don't fit in the scope of the game. Like there are things that we pulled out in other places that make room for those, and there were some of them that didn't make it that we wanted to do as well. Just a few, but it. If we had our way, we'd still be working on the game. Sure, you guys wouldn't be playing it for another 4 years. It's just, at some point they're like, okay, you've spent enough money. Like, send it out. Please just put it in a box. Like, we want to have people play it. And I don't mean that flippantly. Like, we didn't just like rush it out or anything like that.
Oh yeah, of course not.
Of course.
But it's
you just want to keep going more.
And more, exactly. And the worst thing is like. No one takes the code away from us. So it's like technically you can just keep working on it. Just no one will play it.
Out, you're just like,
no one can play that version.
That's funny.
And I've worked on games like that where they thought they might get a sequel, so you just start working on it again, and then it gets canceled, and you have this like half-done game, and you're like, oh man, like no one will ever see this. Like me and Corey made I shouldn't say just me and him, like it was me and him, but like a small group of us at this old company we worked at, Paradox, we made a Kill Bill demo, and it was sick. And we even had like call with Tarantino and the whole thing, and it just never saw the light of day. And then we found out this is how the old industry used to work. I'm being terrible right now. I'm gonna get super in trouble. So back in the day, it wasn't like, hey, make a video game and this is what you're gonna make. They would like a publisher would be like, we have this license, and they would go to multiple teams and they would have them make demos, and no one else knew that they were also making demos. And then they would look at them internally, and then they would like cancel the ones that weren't good, and the best demo would get made. Yeah, it was super messed up. So we found out later that there were other companies making Kill Bill demos as well.
Dang.
None of them saw the light of day.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, that's how it used to be. It was super competitive. Because they were all third party and they could just do whatever they wanted to. So yeah, like.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. That's it. I'm going to get sniped on the way.
Dude, Kill Bill, some like God of War combat.
Well, this was before.
Like the old PS2 God of War.
But this was before that.
Yeah.
So we weren't onto that tip yet. But it was cool. Like you could like slash guys and like jam your sword and pin them into the wall and then pull your gun out and shoot them and pull your sword back.
That's fun, dude.
Yeah, Corey went nuts with the animations.
It was just so awesome.
Cool, yeah.
We were a good 1-2 punch back in the day. Yeah. He'd like animate some stuff and I'd just jam it in, and then we'd argue and fight with each other and then do better versions.
Before we move on to combat, just some other characters I wanted to bring up. Really wanted to bring up Brock and Sindri.
Yeah.
How
that is the worst moment of the whole game.
Yeah.
Of just
devastation.
I felt hurt big time there. That was the biggest moment for me, dude, losing him.
It was not only the biggest like devastation, but it was also the biggest plot twist.
Yeah,
when he
figures
out.
Yep.
Tyr is Odin. Like,
so why did it hurt you so much? I'm
just because, well, like Brock, he has this attitude of being a hard ass and mean to people, but he really cares about his brother and other people, and it's there throughout the first game a little bit. In the second one, he's like even more. They're at the dinner table eating together and everything like that. And Brock feels like he really's got like Kratos at Atreus' back, almost like an uncle or something like that. Just to see him get taken out like that, dude,
brutal. And then I lost my brother, so I got that whole like baggage coming
in.
And then just like the vibe of, family's such a big part of God of War.
Yeah.
So I just love that it's like they're not related.
Isn't it crazy that you just said that?
What?
That family's a big part of God of War.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
because it's always been.
Yeah, always,
but it was from a different slant, and now it's like where people completely pull into it. But he's always been dealing with his family, his sister and his other dad, and
Sindri going rogue out there. I'm like worried about, dude. I'm like, don't do anything too crazy, man.
Yeah, the thing I think that there's a couple little things with Brock that line up to make you really feel that, and it's mostly the Svartalheim mission where they go to make the spear.
Yeah,
because he does the whole thing with a blessing, but there's this one little drop line that he does on the way out, and he's talking about how everything worked out, and he goes, "Today was a good day."
Yeah,
and that's the thing that in your subconscious, today was a bad day. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like the flip of that, and it just it crushes you inside when it happens.
It really does.
And because you said that the reveal happens there at the same time, you don't even get time to process it. It's like bam, bam, and you're
just there. Yeah.
And that's why we had him go on the hunt, so you as the player could also sit in it and be like, feel exactly what they're feeling, and then it's like, okay, and then who gets everybody back on the horse? Kratos.
Yeah,
right. He talks sense and everything.
Yeah,
stoic.
Yeah,
but Atreus, you take the lead and go find him. But it's like. He knows what people need when they need it. It's like if they need a stern, talking to, or if they need caring, like he's not emotionless. It's just that he carries himself in a certain way that he has a code about things. He's not just going to give out compliments here and there. So, you know what I mean? Like you have to earn everything with him.
From what he's been through, it's
been
apparent forever.
But it's like that is very important to us. That there's like I don't know how to describe it. There's like a mental capacity that he has for certain things, and those buckets aren't equal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's like
sure.
like under duress, his bucket is gigantic. Yeah. That's why he doesn't flinch, right? But in other things, he pops because he doesn't and we're trying to make those buckets get bigger so he could hold more of that. So he doesn't crack all the time with the kid, and he's all these bits and pieces. So and that shows growth, because I think that's what we do as people. Like everybody has their thing they're good at and they can take a lot of, and there's all these deficiencies, and those are the things you're trying to build over time. Because if you test someone's strength, you kind of know what you're going to get. But if you test their weakness, you know exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And it's hard to grow those. So we try to look at each character in that way and see like what their buckets are and how much they can take. Like where Sindri's very giving and giving and giving and giving. And so once he figures out that he's not giving, people are taking, that breaks him inside. You know what I mean? And then the ultimate taking is the brother, and then that's it. He's broken.
Yeah, devastation, dude. That's gonna stick with me for a long time.
I think it was like they said like his soul can't move on to the afterlife too, or something like that.
Well, yeah, because he was already brought back once. He lost the direction.
I was
So he
like,
can't find his way back to the light.
dude.
Yeah. Gone forever.
Yeah.
Gotta go into the Odin
The
tear
thing, maybe.
somehow and find that piece soul or something. I don't know. Combat.
Yes.
Like, again, you've been working on this for so long, like, all the way back. You said God of War 2 was, like, a lot of combat that you worked on.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make a sequel, like, because 2018 combat is just so great. Like, how do you balance wanting to do more, but also not wanting to shake it up too much? If it's already great, don't fix what's not broken. Or whatever.
Jason McDonald, he's our design director on this project. He was combat designer on 2. He was the lead combat designer, I think he built Kratos on 3, and then I think he was a lead on Ascension and 2018. So he has a very particular understanding of sequels as well, going through the studio, which is you should have just enough new stuff, but everything else should be so polished that when you go back and play the other game, you're like, I wish I played like the new game. And we saw that people would go back and play 2018, they're like, oh, this part's a little clunky. It's so much smoother now over here. Now, that's not always the case. Some people they're not open for change. So like once they get this, even if this is better, they just won't adapt. Yeah. And that's unfortunate, but that's how the world goes. But so he's always had that, and I think we achieved that to some degree. And then he really was good about pushing that into the new guys leading the charge, which was Mihir and Denny. And they've done a bunch of good stuff on the internet. If you want to listen to them, really go deep on the combat.
Heck yeah.
But those two guys, and they came up under Jason and myself and a few others. So it's like we have this like passing of the torch in the combat group, and we're always growing the next batch, like homegrown. Very rarely do we hire someone in the combat team from outside the studio. It's usually like this growth pattern.
That's cool.
And there's some kids on the team right now that are like, there's this guy Adrian and Adam and Aiton, and like they're like the next batch is coming. And we already have a group in the middle from that, which is this guy Rob Meyer and Lauren. I'm probably forgetting somebody else. This is why it's always bad when you use names. But all you guys on the combat team, like, we're looking out for you, and we want you to be the next bunch. But it's funny, like, as I'm talking about that because that's like a near and dear group that I started in. But the whole team is like that. Like, we always are trying to like grow within and see who's going to be next. And there's just I like that, like kind of like lineage.
Yeah. Why did you guys get rid of the executioner's cleave?
This is the one thing.
Why?
This is the one thing me and Mike are like, why?
Well, it's in there.
It's not the same though.
Same.
Well,
you added the utility of like freezing them and throwing them, which is cool. Yeah. We love that.
But the cleave is there. It's just the finisher now.
Yeah, but I think just being able to do that
I know.
Anytime we wanted the bloodlust.
So the funny thing about that is that was in the other game because we couldn't do the all kills with the weapons against everyone. So we made a supplement thing to make the axe stand out a little bit more than the blades. This time we were trying to level the playing field. Okay. So we pulled all those into the core execution system where whichever weapon you had in your hand, and then we tried to give each one its own little special thing where that had the hammer toss, as we call it. I can't remember what the name of that one is. Serpent's something. I can't remember the name of it, damn it. And then the blades have like the combat grapples where you slam into them and pull the guys over to you. Excuse me. And then the spear had the siphon. So they each had their own little like unique thing that they could do that was also based on their status ability with the thing. So yeah, those are hard decisions.
We're obsessed with that.
Trust me, like even some of the
Only we care about that.
some of the runics that we drop down into like kind of like the advanced moves, like for this one, like where you can hold down R1 and he does like the little runic and the ice goes. Some people were like, I missed that as a runic. Why'd you do that? So it's like it's so hard to please everyone. So,
totally.
Very sorry, but but you know what? 2018 still exists.
Yeah, 2018 still exists. That's right.
There's some epic moments of Kratos like reliving his past in 2018. The Blades of Chaos situation, seeing Zeus kind of in that.
The jug, dude.
Yeah, the jug. With Ragnarok, did you ever want to do anything more with like any of the Greek stuff? Like as a player, I was always like, I would love for them to put some of the Legionnaires or just some of those old enemies in like a Muspelheim combat arena.
It's always tempting.
Yeah.
But they're expensive.
I believe it.
It's not just that. I mean, they are. I mean, building a character is the amount of people power it takes to build a character is insane. And that goes for anything. Like building a tree. This just sounds like it should be an easy or a door. You know what I mean? Like everything is expensive with people's time. But it has to fit with the story and the Greek stuff. There may be a time and a place for that in the future. But right now, the Norse was the focus, and we didn't want to get too in the weeds with that stuff. We need to have little callbacks here and there. That's why the spear was so important.
Yeah.
But they were more about like Kratos as a character, not just like the fan service. Let's fight a Cyclops.
Yeah.
So not that there's anything wrong with that, because dude, I'm all in for that. If it ever.
I just want to see. I want to see Greece with those. That just these visuals. It is awesome.
Yeah.
Never know.
Yeah.
I like I said, I don't know what's going on right now.
Yeah.
But
I was kind of hoping Kratos would like tell Atreus more about it. I guess like he's still like holding things back. I feel like, and he's going to be for what they both are.
It's not so much that. It's just that like there was a lot of stuff that happened in that backyard over the 3 years.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So,
sure,
and that's more of an implied storytelling technique.
Love that.
I know it's not always the best because we are very much like, show, don't tell, kind of thing.
Sure.
But in that regard, you do have to take a couple liberties and say they've been back there doing some stuff. That's why we started in a cave. Like they're coming off one of those missions and you see a little well-oiled machine. You're like, okay, all the like, this is how you do this. This is how you work with me. This is how I'm going to take care of you. That's all been ironed out. And you just show that immediately because they don't talk a lot in that scene at all. It's like physical actions, a couple things here and there, and then they go about their business. And that was super important to me that we just get out of the gate and be like, no, they're good now. And this way he puts his arm around him and you're like, oh yeah, we're about to go on this.
Yes.
But then you see him with the marble and you're like, oh man, there's always a wedge.
Always something. There's always
yeah.
How about bosses? God of War has such legendary boss fights.
We try.
Well, what was the overall mission with God of War Ragnarok, balancing, because there's so much variety, there's so many mini bosses, there's big bosses.
It's variety is the spice of life for this, right? Like we're always looking to make sure that each one has its own unique thing, and then we wanted them to all have a story connection. It wasn't just like, let's go find big thing and kill it. Now there is a little bit of that, but it's usually in the exploration spaces, like in the crater, like your dragon hunting and things like that. But as far as the core ones, I wanted them to each have like an identity that you could pull out and somebody would connect with in a different way. So like, Thor's Kratos is equal essentially, right?
Yeah.
The weapons are made to counteract each other. The two guys wielding them are, cautionary tale of what you could be if you stayed on this road, all this kind of stuff. And then Freya is just like, okay, it's the opposite of that. She's like the person you don't want to fight. And then she shows up in the form of like the thing that is the scariest to you, right? That's why you put her in that Valkyrie. And you're like, oh no. Bow down. Thing, right? And then the bear is like, okay, like Kratos fights things in nature, and then the twist on it being Atreus. And so each one had this kind of thing, and Garm then becoming Fenrir.
So
it's like because it's like the big boss, but then he becomes your buddy. So each one had this kind of thing that went about him. And then there was the challenge bosses, like the berserkers and
those are great.
Stuff like that.
I really appreciate stuff like that.
Yeah. But even then, we still try to have some kind of story
connection
together.
Why they're there. Some sort of history behind them. I really liked. So one of my criticisms with 2018s was a lot of troll bosses. A lot of troll bosses. Great moment in this game though. There's a part I think you go on the tram one of them like attacks you guys.
Oh, my trolling with trolls.
Yeah,
moment?
yeah.
That's
And
what it was
Kratos
called
just
internally.
Cuts his head off immediately,
Yes.
and I was like,
Yes.
"That was great.
Yeah.
That was a great
No,
moment."
that
I
was
loved.
my love letter to the fans. Like, we heard you.
Yeah, that was exactly. I felt
Message
it
received.
very received. I was like,
Yes.
beautiful.
And we knew too. Like, there was a couple things we could have done differently with the trolls. I think, like in hindsight, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, and we still put a couple hidden ones in the game too.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find the one in Svartalheim?
Yeah,
In the underground?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there's the sad one, like just sleeping on the hill in Midgard. You just kept there waking up. And then there's the stone ones.
yeah.
Did you guys pick up on the twin stone ones? We
know if I
trolled
did.
with the name.
I don't think so. I
think
can't
I remember.
They're called like what are they called? Gorlab of the ashes and Gorlab of the frost, which is Barlog backwards.
That's
Oh
so
man,
funny.
that is funny.
Dude, never
I don't
got
even know
that.
if he knows about that
Oh,
one.
that is funny.
So yeah.
That's
That's a
awesome.
good head. Yeah.
Were there any?
We are very self-aware. Like,
Were there any bosses that just didn't work, or some bosses that exceeded your expectation, where it just like evolved into something more?
Garm was a challenge.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah, that was our favorite boss fight.
Yeah.
Because at first he wasn't just running around in the arena. He was a little bit more on the edges. And
Mm-hmm.
I challenged the designer, Lauren. I was like, hey, you pulled off Stonemason. You can figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he was like, okay. Like, you know, it's kind of like, okay, he's got faith in me. And also, why would you make me do this crazy challenge? And then, you know, he just got after it. And they brought that together working with the animation team. And, you know, it feels, you're so rampant. He's running around.
Yeah.
He's so big. And, you know, the chain slamming, all the stuff that took to get that to work and look good. Yeah, that just hats off to everybody who put Garm together. But I mean, it's like for each one of them has their own specific problems like that, like the Nidhogg with the teleport stuff and
I really like that.
all
fight.
that kind
Yeah,
of
I
stuff.
thought
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
cool.
really cool. And like, hats off to Kim who animated most of that. Like she finally clicked on a style, and then it just like that boss started to come together, and then Adrian rallied behind her and all the VFX team and all that kind of stuff. And it's just there's just so many people.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember
coming
everybody's name
together.
that put, because it's like 30, 40 people that it takes to bring these bosses together. So it's
Thank you. 30,
yeah,
40 people.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
it's so much. And coming from someone who's built them, I know how challenging they are too. So it's like you're almost like asking people to go through the fire that you know how bad that is. And
Yeah.
it's tough. Like when we did Colossus and God of War 2.
Colossus
like,
Roads.
Yeah. it
Oh,
was,
yeah.
You know, because that was the whole, like Garm was the flip of that. We were like, we need what we call boss as the level. You know, and it's like, because he's strung throughout the entire level. So that, you know, and it starts off where there's like way more encounters with them, like, you know, and then you finally figure out what you exactly need to tell the right story. So those are the ones that are hard. They get scoped pretty quick because everyone's like freaking out.
Yeah, the
As it
bosses.
should be. So.
Such high stakes. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got God of War 1, like, looking in magazines, looked awesome. It was like, dude, I'm going to get this game. But what sold me immediately was the freaking Hydra. Like,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
straight
Way
away.
to start the
yeah,
game.
what an opener. Like,
Yeah,
what a
that's
boss
what I mean. They're
battle.
just super fun, and like they always have to have a good ending too. You know, like so we really focus on like the twin Valkyrie, like Hrist and Mist, like that. I was like, we have to do this comic book shot at the end, and we had to figure out how to get there. And that was like, so it was almost like we knew the ending, and then we were just building a fight around to get there, and then based on what the Valkyries could do, and Rob Meyer and a couple other people that worked on that, like really brought that home. Dennis like crushed the final pose, like with their standing, like he's the bear and Kratos, and you're just like, yeah, like, how can you not? You know what I mean? If you don't,
background.
if you don't like that, I'm like, we're out of ideas. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and then there's little things like that are hard to get across sometimes, particularly in the final Thor fight when we were working that out. The last scene where they go into the talking part, I was like, he's got to come flying in and pin down Thor's left hand so he can't snap his fingers to call the hammer back. And we were like wrestling around with what that was be, and it finally, I can't remember if it was me or somebody else, like it was like, use the hunting knife. It's the one thing that we don't see that often, and you see Kratos come flying in, not because if you jam the giant blades through it or a spear,
Yeah.
it just look ridiculous, and he puts the hunting knife right through the left hand. You can see it, like, because Thor's about to snap to call the hammer back, and he just pins him down, and then they have that moment, and then he finally pulls it out, and it just, to me, spoke about how grounded the big, because it's huge at that point, lightning's coming in, and then you bring it all the way down to like a dude's hand and a hunting knife, you know, and it's like, that was, I think, for me, one of those beautiful moments that showed like the whole game, like all the, the epic, unflinching and honest, all in one little sequence. So yeah, they all have that little magic to them.
So awesome. Love that. We haven't really talked about Odin. Yeah. I do want to talk a little.
He's in
about,
the game.
Yeah, I do want to talk about Odin. I love the way that the whole game you're just like, because in 2018 you're like, okay, Odin's the big bad villain, and then in this one it's like, all right, he's the villain. But then like as the game goes on, I was like, is he like. I get it that it's like the ends might justify the means for him, but it's like, yeah, what if that tear is like a bigger threat than anything?
Well, he sold it really well.
Yeah, he sold it so well.
Go back to your father, I know you will.
He was just getting in my head the whole game.
That's the point. I think he was getting in all the players' heads, which was great.
See, people are going to take me taking a drink of water while you guys were all saying that. Is there some secrets?
Yeah.
So any mannerism that I do, like people are like, what he blinked his eyes 7 times. That means we're one of 7 realms. Yeah. No, I mean Odin is. It's funny because when you say villain, because we don't think of anybody as a villain in the game. There's no heroes or villains. It's just like there's people that are against each other for different reasons, and I think when you treat him that way is like why he can kind of pull the wool over your eyes to some degree. Because he's like, same thing with Thor. It's like people like, dude, Thor killed all the giants. Yeah. It's not like Kratos blew up Greece. Like we can't forget these things. Yeah. But then you still feel for him, right? So like, and it just again shows how good the writers are at bringing that stuff together and the performers for bringing that out of the characters.
Definitely.
Yeah, but Odin himself, like, we always try to give the gods something that would drive normal people crazy. And it just takes it longer for that to happen. And it's like, for him, he's like, I don't know where I come from. And now he can't get over that. I don't know where I go. Everyone else knows what happens. And I don't. Yeah. And I'm supposed to be the guy who knows everything. And so he does everything in his power to get knowledge. He jams a spear in his side, hangs himself to a tree. You know what I mean? Like all these different things. And it's just never enough. And it was very important, like when we had the final scene with him and Sonny, we were talking to Richard, and I was like, when you deliver the line of like, I can't stop, I can't change, it's never, like I can't remember exactly what those words are in that moment, but it's like that has to be the most believable thing you've ever said. It's like him being completely honest for the first time. There's no, not even a little trickle of seed of doubt or anything in there. And you feel it when he says that, and then that's when the kid says, "Why'd you have to say that?" And because he believes him, and he's like, "Because now I got to do this." And then the marble he goes, So
chills,
chills. Yeah, it's just like it's an awesome moment, but everything has to lead up to it. So every little scroll you read in 2018, or anything you hear about him, or Mimir says about him, and then all the way into Ragnarok, all leads up to you believing that to be true in that moment. But then when you meet him in Asgard, you're kind of like, I don't know, it's like I would hang out here.
Yeah,
like
he
gives me all this stuff. Like, what kid doesn't want a bunch of cool stuff? It's like, want an Xbox here? Boom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, it's I guess I should have said PlayStation. I'm gonna get fired now. God damn it. Damn. But it's those things that we really look for because you can relate to it. You understand that, and then to what you were saying, you're like, is he?
Yeah.
Like,
I guess not villain, like antagonist.
Exactly.
Word.
But it's those kind of things, and when we see that, that's the wild thing about the internet now too. There's so much analysis and critique.
Yes.
And, some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's unfounded, some of it's just wild hypothesis. But it's just cool that people are into it to spend time on it that way. You know what I mean? And like when you see somebody really get it, I was watching one the other days, and they really understood what we were trying to do with the RBR. Like the house and how it becomes this, place. Everybody starts showing up, and you're like, dude, look at all these people here. These are the best of the Norse, and they're all at this house. And then when you get to the end, nobody's there.
Yeah.
The only person's there is a shopkeeper, Lunda, and she's just trying to hold things together. And you're like, oh no.
Fellowship shattered.
Yeah, exactly. And it just stares you in the face. And that was really important to us again, because we wanted it to feel like, when you go home for Christmas and maybe you missed your flight, so you're a little bit late and the party's already going on, and you walk in and your family's all like having a good time, and you're like, oh, that. We wanted you to have that feeling every time you come to the RBR. You know what I mean? You're like, something's already going on. It's happening. And that's where I think a lot of that magic, again, because people have those feelings. Absolutely. And then when you go home and it's not there because of whatever reason, it's like it feels empty and you don't know if you want to come back here anymore. It's not home anymore.
Yeah, I really craved those moments for sure. Just getting back there, taking a little break. Like I would never pause the game ever. I would just idle there if I needed to go like grab a drink of water or something. It was just
So
like
your playtime went through the roof.
yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
As we get closer to wrapping this up, is there anything that you haven't been asked or hasn't been brought up that just in general that like you wanted to say that just about God of War? Or
I think
Ragnarok?
there's one thing. I don't know if fans have found this one yet, but like,
Who blew that horn?
gotta ask the other guy. I'm sticking to that answer. I know, but I can't say. What was I gonna say now? So there's a little moment in the Ironwood section where Atreus shoots his shot and he tries to give Angerboda the flower, and she just completely shuts that down. I love that moment. By the way, I think the team like. They had many things to say about that. But they were like, we should take this out. But if you go to Angerboda's treehouse area in Jotunheim at the end of the game, you may notice on a table over in the corner that the flower has magically returned. Somebody might have stopped by before he went out to look for, the giant marbles.
Giants, that's sick.
Oh.
Great little detail there.
Detail.
Yeah. Oh my god, I love when Kratos
Whoever did that,
meets her.
Justin Stanton, thank you for doing that.
That rules. Yeah, Kratos and Angerboda, those conversations. Like,
Yeah, and I think that's where you
so
don't.
good.
There's so many cooler things happening there, like his Ven's there and she's there, and Kratos has that little line about like "I like you."
Yeah.
So it's like, but over in the corner, the thing that you don't see right away, it's there, like that they're, they like each other.
Yeah. So awesome.
I have a question, non-God of War related.
Sure.
So I heard you bring this up before, and you spoke about it a little bit here too. Castlevania.
Oh man,
I want to know more about this. Hypothetical.
hypothetical.
You got the reins to Castlevania. What are you doing? You doing 2D? You doing 3D?
I mean,
Great question.
I should not talk about any of this because it's just gonna.
Okay. Just wanted to throw that out there.
pressure.
Just
PR.
throwing a
This is
feeling.
it is not a thing, by the way. This is not like some secret
We're not saying it's
magical
happening
thing.
at
We're
all.
just spitballing. Here,
I
everyone.
sh-
We're just spitballing.
I should have never said that on Kind of Funny because I did not realize like how much like that was gonna go. There's like hundreds of articles written about it. I was like, oh my gosh.
We're just
like, so-
spitballing. Nothing's concrete at all. None of this is true.
Selfishly, obviously, I'd make a 2D game.
Okay. Would you do it like the classic style or the Metroidvania style?
Metroidvania, 100%. Yeah, I would. Like I said, I just got done playing Blasphemous, and I was like, well, this is such a spiritual successor to that. Like, there's the sweaty controller platforming moments in that game.
Yeah, sure is.
Like
All swipe pits.
Yeah, those games, there's just a special place. Like Symphony of the Night is like my favorite game of all time. Like it's not even close. Like it's
one of the greats.
dwarfs everything else. And I know it's to most people are just like why, but it's just
You had
it's
to be
again
there, man.
it's one of those games that it just gives you more every time you play it. You
does,
learn
yeah. There's a
something
lot
more. You
to
find
it.
the secrets and this kind of stuff. And it was a time when it was very formative. Like I remember I imported that game from a place in New York called NCSX back in the day.
Ooh.
And played the Japanese version like forever and a day. I still have my memory card with those saves on
Awesome.
it for the PS1. But it just there's something magical about that game. And I'd always liked the series, but that one, it just clicks in all the right places. It's immersive. The art's incredible. Naomi Kojima's art is fantastic
Yeah,
on the
she's
cover.
one of my favorites, dude. For sure.
So like it just I kind of like that setting as well.
Yeah,
I still like a lot of
totally.
things that click. Like Igarashi's game Bloodstain was awesome.
Yeah, I love
Yes.
Played the
Bloodstain.
crap out of that.
Sure.
So-
Hollow Knight.
But and I think it's that Hollow Knight's fantastic too. But it's that pull back to that time period, And
Yeah.
I think those are like cool. They're like these little nostalgia time machines. It's like Tunic. Like I'm
Yeah,
not even joking.
definitely.
I felt like man, this is crazy. When I was like 8 years old and played like Zelda for the first time on the NES, and it just like you said, the manual, and
Yeah.
just deciphering it,
Yeah,
and all that
like,
kind of
yeah,
stuff. Like
so fun.
that's just great. And it's funny because like that's what I'll usually play on my downtime. Is I like to play a little bit smaller games and stuff like this, and then I'll play the big epics when they come out as well. But it's a hard thing to balance. And then when you're trying to make one, and your sensibilities are like, I'd rather do these things.
Yeah.
And you're trying to like be in the middle of
Yeah.
that, because you know what you need to do. But it's all, I think that's what's fun about it. It's like look at someone like, John Favreau. He started out making these little movies like Swingers and stuff like that, and then he's just like, I'm gonna make Iron Man.
Yeah.
I think that's what's awesome. If you have a vision, like you can take that and you can get people to rally around you and do that. And I learned a lot of that from like Corey and being around people. Corey was associated with like George Miller at the time. I learned so much over there. But I was only there for like a week, and I was just writing stuff down like furiously because he's just dropping like knowledge bombs left and right. And just me and Corey used to talk about movies all the time and games and like how things could be progressed, and like we had kind of different sensibilities about what we liked, but we'd always come back to like, this is an interesting thing, or I might see like a subtlety in a film that he was like, oh, I didn't realize that at all. Like, we used to talk about Sunshine all the time because I'd rave about it. I was like, I love Sunshine. He's like, dude, that one with the weird sun monster? And I was like, yeah, but I was like, did you realize that
The
like
last act gets all weird.
yeah, when all the people were dying, everyone was dying based on like religious beliefs and stuff like that. And he was like, what? I was like, dude, he literally runs across the catwalk that's a cross like several times in the movie. And he was like, what? But then he would tell me some wild stuff about like, Mad Max or whatever that I was like, I hadn't even thought about it like that, And so it was fun to watch, like, because I'm always looking from like the visuals, and the storytelling can be done with that, and he's always deep in the psyche of the characters. And as we like around each other, we start to learn, and you peel that off, and you can kind of work both worlds. And I think
Great
that's
balance.
where it starts. Yeah, and it's why you have to have partners. Like if anybody's out there doing creative things, or whatever, find a partner. I cannot stress that enough. Like I've had so many good ones that just connect. Like Derek Daniels and me were like two peas in a pod when it comes to like doing combat design and just design in general. And I remember it'd be like silly stuff. We'd be on God of War 1, like one fussing over the parry, like plus 1 frame, minus 1 frame, too hard, too easy, like a frame, 1 frame, and he'd always be like, I don't know, I played it last night. I did 100 of them, and I didn't feel good. Like maybe fiddle with the hip pods. The timing's good, but it doesn't feel good. And then we go back and mess around with that, and it's just like you need people to push you back and forth like that and challenge you and not get personal about it. But yeah, find a partner. Partners, you have to have that because iron sharpens iron. It's gonna be it's gonna be sparks. Don't let it catch on fire. Like catching on fire is bad, but sparks are okay.
Wise words. Now my mind is just imagining Sony Santa Monica making a freaking Metroidvania.
Whoa,
game.
don't think that. Don't think that.
Fantasizing about that.
What am I doing?
We're not putting that out
Nothing
there.
exists.
It would be cool, but we're not putting it out there.
So many emails and phone calls when I go back to the office. Please stop talking.
Because we always talk about like From Software making like a Castlevania game or something.
I think it's cool to have a dream project. You know what I mean? And it's like even if it's not in the cards, there's like a little origami game that I designed like back in 2002 that I always go back to, and no one's ever going to see this game. It's like my sandbox, that I play in, and I'll mess around with little ideas and this kind of stuff, and you have to have that as well. It's like I don't care if it ever gets made. It's just for me to think about things, and when I get stuck on a problem, I'll go goof around in there because I know that world and only I know it. And then when whatever comes out of that, like the like model or the primitive that could be used to design other things, then it's just like it's fine. Nobody needs to know.
How do you keep that passion for so long? Because again, you've said you've worked on God of War for so long. We just learned that Naughty Dog is kind of given up on Uncharted. They're kind of done with that. How do you just keep that going with God of War? And what do you focus on, or just to keep that?
I mean, I have a fortunate situation because when I was consulting for 10 years, I could touch other things. So I could kind of work on, I worked on like The Order, I worked on Spider-Man, worked on Space Marine, worked on Darksiders, worked on Lords of the Fallen. I worked on a whole bunch of different games, right? And so you get to kind of like bounce around. So I think I have a unique perspective in that. I think there might be some people in the studio who are like, yeah, man, like, are we going to ever do anything else? Like, this is getting tough. And I can sympathize with that for sure. I'm also kind of a creature of habit, and I'll just, like,
Same.
I have like 20 of the same t-shirts I've been wearing for like 20 years, you know what I mean? So it's like I don't have to go chase the new old thing. Like this is funny. I didn't even switch over my phone until like they literally forced me to. I had an iPhone 4S, and they were like, we are shutting down the 3G network. You must get a new phone. So I got a new phone like last year. Yeah. Like, my wife makes fun of me. She's like, how do you work in video games and you have like the arcade technology? Like I use the same ice cream scoop that my great grandmother gave me when I was a child.
Awesome.
You know what I mean? Like it's like I'm a weirdo like that. I'm sure most people want to go do some brave new thing or whatever, but I like the guy too. I see a lot more we could do, and we'll see if they give us the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, with there's just so much expectation, so much on the line with making a game. Is there a lot of pushback with, Sony proper versus creative direction? Like, how do you balance the creative versus, do you guys have free reign on that?
It's about as free as you can get. Like, they don't come in and are like, please do this or please do that. They trust us with what we're doing, and when the money is asked for, obviously there's like, okay, can you show us what you're actually doing? Like, how do you want to give you this? So there's like a whole process to that. And I remember because I was super nervous about doing it. Like, so I had my little inspiration book, and they were like, you're gonna have to pitch it to Scott Rhodey at some point what we're gonna make and all that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, just give me a heads up or whatever. But they knew I get in my head about these things. So they just like randomly brought me into a conference room one day, and then he's sitting there, and I was like, this is like time to pitch the game, So, and like Corey's sitting over there, like Shannon and Yubi, and then I'm sitting right next to Scott, and I'm like walking through this book and all that. And I'm like, dude, I hope I don't blow this.
Speed of sweat.
Yeah. And then when it went to COVID, you'd have these check-ins every year where there'd be like a call with like Scott Rhodey and like Herman Holst, and like I would walk them through where we're at and things like that. But they seem to be pretty happy the whole time. We never.
Yeah.
Great. They're. I think that's one good thing. If you do right first party and you take care of it and you make something that you believe in, they'll do that. Now this is very unique. I mean, when I was working a third party back in the early days, like even on an X-Men game, it was ridiculous. We couldn't even get reference. I'd have to go to the 7-Eleven and buy my own comic books to see like what the heck was going on with X-Men.
Man.
And it was a bummer. But it was a different time. You got to think about this like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And Marvel wasn't the beast that it is now. So, it's just the industry is grown up and changed, and I think like they understand like anything. It's like if you're gonna bet on it, and you bet on those people and leave them alone to do it. You know what I mean? Because that's the thing you're supposed to do. Like if you get into a certain meddling, it's like why hire them at first? You should do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like nobody wants that. So yeah. But you also have to be responsible. Like you can't just be loud, man. Just be like, I'll do whatever I want.
Yeah, of course.
That is not. By any stretch of the imagination, that is not what's happening. Yeah.
So then you get games that never come out.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And I know what that feels like. I have plenty of games canceled, like back in the early days. It's like one thing. It's different in industry now. It's harder to get in as a young person because you have to go to school and all that, which we didn't. You just like, hey, I made this mod. They're like,
cool.
You know what you're doing. Here's the desk. Get going. So that part's harder. And then they had to pay a bunch of money for that. You know what I mean? And then they don't get a taste of that quick failure because, you might get 3 games canceled in like 9 months.
Yeah.
And then you go make a game in another 9 months. Back then, so iteration of gaming or making games was a lot quicker. So it's and the swings are hard to say like, all right, I'm going to sign up for 4 years to do this thing, and I don't know if it's actually going to work at the end or be good. It's like that's a tough thing to ask people.
Yeah,
and,
commit to.
But
definitely.
it's also something you have to, it's deep down you have to be like, but what if we did it?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like let's go climb that mountain, and no one else has done it, and no one else will do it ever again, because that's what each game is. Like you have to think of it as like a singular mountain that doesn't get blown up at the end.
Whoa, I like that.
Because nobody can climb your mountain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They can't. Ubisoft's not always going to make God of War Ragnarok. You know what I mean? So it's like it's a singular moment in time. So
it's interesting you say that, because I would assume just because of like digital games and indie games and just how many games there are now, I thought it'd maybe be like, in a way, kind of easier to kind of get into.
I think from that, but I'm saying it's a AAA level. Back in the day, you could be on a AAA project like right out. You know what I mean?
Got it.
And they were shorter even. I mean, even that X-Men game we made, I think, was only 18 months start to finish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas like that's like unheard of now. Like if you can make a AAA game in 18 months, you would have to have.
It's like 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, even with the Ubi model, like where they have like 3 continents, 1,000 people working literally 24 hours a day, it's still, because communication breaks down. That's the only problem. As you grow in mass, you're going to lose the soul. So you got to stay. Even us, like we struggle with that. We're like, we don't want to get too big because then you lose it. And even where we're at right now, you're in that growth because you want to do more, but you're like, well, it gets dangerous, and you got to be really cognizant of like how you manage people's time.
That's fascinating. Yeah, because I imagine more people, more resources,
and then
bigger, but also
and then everything you knew
focus.
is now gone because of work from home. So you have to relearn how to communicate and all these type of things, right? So
I can't believe you guys made this game during that pandemic and
Making a game in
everything.
general
Yeah.
is a magic trick that
Yeah.
can never be repeated, but like that was an interesting take on it for sure. And like I said, I hats off to the team because it all comes down to them. Like they want to do it and they want to find a way to solve problems, and that's the beauty of the game industry is that you have a bunch of incredible people that are good at solving problems. And when you put it in front of them, they get after it.
Thank you.
They can't leave it alone either. It's not just Santa Monica. It's like every team that goes out to every team.
Developers.
Yeah.
Yes, every
thanks.
team that goes out, they want to make the best game they can. No one's like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to middle it.
I'm gonna phone it in
No
today.
one goes to work like that. So it's like I get very upset about when I read just like the hot takes.
Same.
It's just like, man, like
The classic lazy devs
go,
comment.
yeah,
Oh my god.
just go do it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you tell me you're lazy. Like the amount of like neurons that fire in your brain on a daily basis to solve some of these problems. I mean, it's just it's a whole different thing. I like run a lot, and that's like physically exhausting. I haven't been doing it right now. People make fun of me on camera, but so I know what that feels like. But when you go do this, I'm sometimes more tired at the end of the day because you just thought about so many things.
Oh, yeah.
You go through it. So it's that's why that's slightly offensive, I think. And I'm not trying to hate on those people. They can have their hot take, but
Sure.
I ain't gonna agree with it.
Like, sometimes I stress out for like such small things. I can't even imagine like God
Yeah.
of War, dude.
Yeah.
Stress.
See that for me, I am almost the opposite. Like I like that. It gets me going because I'm like, this is the thing, man. Like, where else would I want to be right now? Like, we're doing the best with the best at the best level.
Yeah.
You know,
That
it's
is
like
so exciting.
That's
where
true,
you,
yeah.
You know, it's like if you're gonna play, you want to play with the team that's good. You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
definitely.
you want to
Best in the
win.
biz.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but we're up there.
Yes.
Definitely.
Brad,
We have heroes.
Yeah. No, I think I'm okay. I think so.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to say?
No, I mean, thanks for having me on.
Thank
Those are
you
the
Yeah,
best.
thanks
so
for joining
much
us.
for joining.
For sure.
That was so fun
Yeah.
talking to you about that, dude. Seriously, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. Got to learn a
Yes.
lot. Cool insight.
Yes.
Super into it.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We're Easy Allies. That was some God of War insights. Love and respect. See you next time.
How do we unlock the realms?
We'll just need something from back at the workshop. Follow me, and be sure to bring the head.
Review copy provided by PlayStation.